Hi guys, today we're going to be taking a look at another British Army dressing. This is the first field dressing, which is essentially the soldier's individual first aid dressing, right the way through from around the Boer War, or certainly used in the Boer War, right the way through to in training use at least in the 1990s. They were supplemented and eventually replaced by the Joint Services dressing, starting in around the 1970s, early 1970s. As I say, certainly used during the Boer War, and I have an illustration of a Boer War example. And indeed here we have a photograph from the King's Own Museum, the King's Own Royal Lancaster Regiment Museum, showing an early Boer War issue first field dressing. As I say, this is a Second World War example. It differs somewhat from those used during the First World War, which again differed from those used during the Boer War. I have a reproduction example here. I don't unfortunately have an original Great War first field dressing, but you can see a comparison here. And this is to a design, or a reproduction of a design introduced in 1911 that was used through the First World War and into the 1920s, certainly. In 1917, the design was slightly modified to include an iodine ampule along with the dressings. There are two dressings inside here. Prior to this, an iodine ampule had been issued in a small cardboard tube during the First World War. I forget when the issue of the iodine ampule first began, but certainly was introduced during the First World War and carried in the dressing pocket separately. 1917, dressings started to be manufactured with the iodine ampule included. Manufacture of dressings with the included ampule stopped because it was through medical reports, it was established that the use of iodine when the first field dressing was being used really wasn't of any great use. And the idea of the first field dressing is to patch someone up so you can get them back to a regimental aid post or a clearing station for the wounded. Basically, it's so you can patch yourself up or someone patch you up in the field so a stretcher bearer can take you back for further medical attention. So this is the 1911 design. Prior to the Second World War, this design was introduced, as I say, slightly modified. This has a tape at the side for pulling the seam apart to get the two dressings inside. This is just stitched and you just open it by tearing that open there. These weren't similar to, as I said in the shell dressing video, these weren't just military issue. You also see these marked with Home Office Home Office contracts for ARP. So for ARP use, obviously prior to the Second World War, there was a great fear of civilian casualties from bombing and so forth, and so these were procured by the Home Office for that purpose. And they were issued, as I say, this design, the Second World War, the typical Second World War design, was used right the way through until the 1970s front line, even then it being used into the 80s in the Falklands, and there are reports of them being used in training in the 1990s. They are sealed inside in a waterproof packaging, which we'll look at in just a minute or two. The outer packaging is just this khaki cotton, sort of to give it a bit of camouflage. The instructions are printed on there. I'll put a still in now for you to have a look at the details of the instructions and so forth. So here you can see the outer packaging of the 1939 dated field dressing. And as usual, if you wish to read the details of the instructions and so forth, you can pause the video here and read at your leisure. So as I say, these were used post Second World War as well, and they were modified in that regard. We have here an example which is 1943 dated, but it's been packaged in cellophane. This is to give it additional waterproofing and protection, primarily for use in tropical environments. And then I have another example here, which in addition to being packaged in cellophane, which it is inside here, it's actually slightly earlier dated. It's then been packaged in this plastic outer as well, heat sealed plastic, and it has a label in the back here, which I'll bring up to the camera there, so hopefully you can see. Hopefully the autofocus is doing its job. It's been given a NATO stock number, dressing field sterilised, and this is for issue. I would imagine these were around in the 1960s probably, and then into the 70s, but obviously repackaged to make it that bit more durable. If anyone knows clearer dates on when these were used, I'd be interested to know. That is with the plastic outer packaging. The dressing itself dates to 1942. But obviously these had a very long service life, as I say, certainly being issued in the Falklands. We'll have a look at the contents now. I have one here that is open. And the packaging here dates this one to 1944. So you have, as you can see, the packaging has just been torn open at the end there. And then inside we get a small waterproof package, including a safety pin, which is used to obviously pin the bandage around once the dressing is applied, used to pin the bandage round, and I'll put a still in the video here again, so you can see the details of the instructions duplicated on the inner packaging there. And here we have the inner packaging. You can see again the instructions here. And once more, if you wish to read them in any detail, you can pause the video and do so. So obviously this inner packaging is designed to be waterproof. It's similar to the joint services dressing outer packaging that was introduced, obviously with that dressing in around the 1970s. Basically that just deleted, the joint services dressing deleted the outer khaki packaging. Inside this, you get, remove it from here, it's all wrapped up. You get a pad with a khaki bandage, which will unravel here, and you can see the pad there. You would never handle the pad. That would be pressed against the wound and then wrapped as tightly as possible with the bandage to stem bleeding, essentially. And it's treated as well, obviously, it's sterilised and treated. Wrap that up again. So, that's a quick look at the first field dressing. As I say, very long service life. This one's a bit fragile, 1939 dated, but they were used right the way through, as I say, to the 90s in training. The first field dressing, as I said earlier in the video, is intended as an individual first aid item. You would never use yours on someone else. You'd always use their dressing on them. As I say, it's quite an interesting little bit of kit. It obviously saved many lives over the years. And it influenced British Army uniform development. And to illustrate this point, we have here a British Army service dress jacket, and you can see here in the skirts of the jacket on the right hand side as you wear it, the field dressing pocket is in the skirts there. When battle dress was introduced in the very late 1930s, battle dress serge initially moved the pocket onto the trousers as you no longer had skirts to the jacket. The pocket is exactly the same design with a single pleat, just now fixed in the same place on the right hand side at the front there. And then, let's drape those over there for a moment, we have here 1940 pattern, which introduced the larger twin pleat dressing pocket, which would be perpetuated in the Korean War combat uniform, the 1960 pattern, which essentially standardised that, and then the 1968 pattern, which was the standard DPM uniform used by the British Army through the 1970s and into the 80s. And then this would disappear with the 1984 pattern, and the dressing pocket moved up onto the arm of the jackets and shirts of the combat uniform. So that's how the field dressing influenced British Army uniform design. And of course, the reason for having the pocket in the same place on each man's uniform is that if you come to someone and they're injured, you'll know where their dressing is, and you're always supposed to use their dressing on them. That is, your dressing's for you, their dressing's for them. You never use your dressing on someone else. So it's important, or it was seen as important, for each person to know where to find the dressing if you came to an injured man. And this is to make sure yours is always available in case you get injured. Very long-lived item, as I say, certainly used in anger, or issued for use in anger in the Falklands, used in training through the 1990s, certainly read accounts of that, and then retired in favour of the joint services dressing, which is now, of course, has been replaced as well. So I hope you found that interesting. If you haven't already, do check out, there's a link to a Facebook page in the description. I post up sneak peeks of videos there and photographs from the collection, which I can't really slot into YouTube videos. I've also got an Instagram going now as well, trying to do the whole social media thing. So if you're not so much of a Facebook person, check that out. If you like the video and like my other uploads that you've seen, please consider subscribing. And if you're already subscribed or newly subscribing, make sure you hit the bell for notifications of when I upload new videos. And yeah, until next time, bye for now.